everybody, Questwise here, and today we're going to be talking about low fantasy gaming. This is by Pock Pocket Press and Stephen Gradzicki. I've done initial impressions of this book earlier back in the channel, and if you want to go check that out, I'll put a link down below as well too. You can actually find that over on their website as well. But the first one was just a sort of my first thoughts on the book when I got it, and kind of my flip through of it and real quick read of the thing. Now that I've had a chance to actually go through this with a little more depth, I want to talk to you probably over a short series. I'm thinking maybe 2 to 3 videos on my grittier thoughts, right? I want to talk to you about like the things that I'm really enjoying about this game, thing I'm really pulling out of the rules and stuff of this as well too. And so this will be kind of a mini series, 2 to 3 videos, if you will. But let's talk a little bit about today. Today we're going to talk about sort of what's in the book, what you can expect from the book, and what it is that speaks to me. Because a lot of times games will vary, right? There'll be games that I don't really enjoy, but other people really, really love. And that's the great thing about our hobby, is that there's something out there for everybody, right? It's the same way in the publishing world of fiction. There's always a story out there that some people really, really love, other people don't like so much. And that's the great thing about our hobby, is that there's something out there for everybody. So everything I'm going to talk about today are going to be my opinions of the game. And if you enjoy the things that I love and you enjoy my opinions about things, I think that you'll really love this game. So let's first kind of step into what this game really it is to me and why I love it so much. First of all, if you've been following the channel for any length of period, you know that I'm a big fan of pulpy action. I love the old school kind of Appendix N kind of fiction. I love grittier, darker fantasy. And I like my games to sort of emulate that kind of stuff as well too. I love Robert Howard's Conan the Barbarian, basically anything that Robert Howard has written. I like my horror to be a little bit more on the psychological cosmic scale and the sort of Lovecraftian kind of feel of things, Laird Barron, those kind of ideas. And so this game really grabs that for me. It's not, and the great thing about this game, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, is it's flexible to fit into whatever it is that you like to play. We'll get to that towards the end of this video a little bit. But for me, what this game is it's gritty and it's low magic. I don't like the term low magic. It's not really low magic. It's as much magic as you want to have. But the aspect of the whole magic thing is that it should be dangerous. It should be fantastical. It should not be a common everyday occurrence. It should be something that brings awe to people when they experience it happening. It should be something that causes horrible repercussions if delved into too deeply. And that's what I love about sort of the Conan Hyborian Age setting, is that magic is dangerous, and it was never really meant for us to dabble in. And while some races like the elves and stuff might have a better, easier time using it, more sort of in touch with it, the further we delve into magic, the more dangerous it becomes. And I love magic. If you've watched the channel for a while, you'll know that I really enjoy the way that different people in games and fiction portray magic and build worlds with that sort of magic system in there. I love seeing those different things come together and the unique uses for magic in those systems, in those worlds. And so everything from sort of the medieval grimoires of our own history, to fantastical ideas of how the earth itself is magical, maybe in like the Tolkien type settings and stuff too. So, but what I really think, though, is that magic was never intended for us to really, really dig into. It might be okay on surface level to use it for very minor things, which, again, should still inspire awe amongst people. But at the same time, it should not be one of those things that we delve too deeply into, because it's things that our minds cannot seem to comprehend and put together, and thus horrible things could happen, or at least unpredictable things could happen. So not so much low magic, but magic with a cost, magic with trepidation going into it. I like, and it's dark fantasy. It's that kind of a gloomy feel to it. It doesn't always, not every day is bright and sunny. There are things to be explored. There are hidden dark places in the world that nobody's experienced for centuries. Those kinds of things. I like that forbidden, and at least in my games, that forbidden knowledge is enticing. I want that you find these magical tomes, or even just historical tomes of places that have been destroyed long ago and sort of meant to be kept hidden and never to be rediscovered. I love that those things are enticing. I love that those things sort of draw out folklore and tales of days gone by. Those, that kind of like the possibility of treasures and stuff beyond your wildest dreams. I love that that stuff is, while dangerous, it's also still very enticing. I really, really dig that in my games as well too. The other thing that's very, very important to me with this is that, and I think this is something that Stephen did very, very, very well. And I find that sometimes this is a very hard thing to grasp. Even in my own experience of writing and designing the few things that I have, there's a weird balance between having easy to understand rules, yet enough complexity, not complexity, enough variation, enough, I guess I would call it completeness without complexity. You want to have enough options that it doesn't feel like you're just sort of a cookie cutter character, but at the same time to try to do that without having a complex series of rules in order to govern those things, right? I think that low fantasy gaming does that very, very well. It's found a way, and it puts a lot of the weight on the players and stuff, and the game master for this stuff as well too. But it's found a way to keep the rules very simple, at least understandable. I've been doing a few reviews of games. I've been doing some study into some other role-playing games and stuff that are just, they're making my brain hurt because the complexity of the rules is so deep and so layered that I just feel like I would lose. I'm a very narrative person when it comes to game mastering. I want the story to be over top of the rules. I want the narration to sort of trump the actual, construction of the game. And so it's some of these games that I've been looking at have been very, very difficult for me to be like, how am I going to keep all this under my, under wraps? Why can't I just do this as a more sort of narratively driven kind of thing? Low fantasy gaming has that. It has this idea of rules that have enough structure to them that the game doesn't just free fall into just a mash of whatever, of just storytelling, but at the same time has enough options and choices and stuff that keep the characters and the world feel very, very unique. Some of the problems with some of the older OSR kind of things were that characters became very cookie cutter. I'm the fighter, I'm the cleric, I'm the thing. That's great, and I love the OSR stuff. It's one of my favorite sort of genres of gaming to play in, but I think I love it because the complexity of the rules is so low. But I really love to have the options, these sort of, not complexity, but I want to have a lot of options to build a world and character. Low fantasy gaming does that, and it does it through charts. It does it through these optional things. At every third level, you get this sort of ability increase thing, this sort of feat, if you will, that you can choose from in the book. Or you can sort of create your own with the game master and stuff as well too. So I love that there's that sort of that idea there that everybody gets to still feel unique in a world where there's not a massive amount of complexity. Inside the book, you're going to find 9 classes. Yes, 9 of them. Artificer, Barbarian, Bard, Cultist. Cultist is interesting. Fighter, unique. Fighter, Monk, Ranger, Rogue, and Magic User. I like that he uses in this term cultist instead of cleric. Again, it gives you this breadth of choices to make, right? Do I follow some sort of local cult? Do I follow some sort of local, uprising? Or am I a sort of a cleric? Am I a person who has devoted themselves to a major deity in a church, in a nationwide religion? Or is it more of a localized type thing? There's a lot of gray area there, that before with cleric you became just a healer. In this, you are a cultist, and there's a lot of different area in there to grow as your character can be seen. One of the things that really sort of, that I always really thought would be interesting is that to make that character class a little bit more, it doesn't necessarily have to be a warrior, holy warrior, Templar kind of thing, but it could be just, a cult, somebody who's following a religion, or bringing their beliefs to the masses, that kind of stuff. So he does that with cultists. Does it very, very well. Again, magic user, again, a very kind of vague idea. It's somebody who uses magic, but how do they get that magic, how it utilizes itself, where they draw it from is all up to you, and I love that. There's lots of other cool options as well too. Like there's only I should say there's only 9 in the core book, but there is a ton of stuff in the core book. But over at the website, and I'll put a link down below, it's lowfantasygaming.com. There's a whole bunch of other stuff over there too. There's a lot of free stuff to download, a lot of cool stuff. There's also a Discord channel, which has a very active community on it, with some really, really great people. I'm really enjoying the Discord, and I'm very, very new to Discord. I don't really know how to use it yet. I'm still in that weird sort of newbie phase, right? But I'm really enjoying Discord, and I really love the Low Fantasy Gaming one. Evocative magic, that's another thing you're going to find on this. And what I mean by evocative is that some of the spells, they sort of emulate things like that you would find in any other game. So invisibility, levitation, magic missile. But they have very creative, awesome, invoking names that make it feel very unique, that make it feel very different. One of the things that I really loved about the game itself is that, and what I love about magic is I want it to feel unique, right? I want it to feel like something that's sort of, it's not just a ready codified thing that everybody knows how to do. It's not just like, oh, here's the levitate spell. I want it to be a thing that's like, I'm drawing these mystical forces together. I'm drawing from these different tomes and these words, and I'm putting them together. And I want to, shape that magic, that power, and force it into this idea, right? I want it to levitate, but I don't want to call it levitate. I want it to have some cool evocative name. You're going to find a lot of that in Low Fantasy Gaming as well too. Like I said before, lots of ways in which to make your character very unique. The flexibility of world design. Now, there is a setting out there called the Midlands, which you can buy. I'm pretty sure it's available in a PDF if you want to download it as well too. But what's really interesting about that, and I haven't had a chance to delve deeply into the Midlands as the core book, but what I find really interesting, and he talks about this in the core book as well too, is that it's more of a framework. Here's some basic ideas of what the Midlands are, and these are what the people do, and here's the major players kind of thing. But here's enough holes, here's enough gaps that I want you and your players to fill those things in. And that's another reason why I love this game, is because that's how I love to run my campaigns. I love to set up an idea, and I set up a sort of starting adventure framework, all right? And I give the players several options to choose from. And I kind of know how I want the whole thing to end, or at least the direction I want that to end. But everything in the middle, I let the players decide. And that's what I love about the world building in Low Fantasy Gaming, is that it's this idea that here's a little bit of structure, here's some ideas, here's the sort of major players, here's a whole framework, so you're not building everything on the fly. But then let the players sort of build the world. Let you guys at the table create the people, the playing, that everybody who's involved, whether it be the game master or the players, they're all collaboratively building filling in these voids themselves. One of the things I really love to do is that when a player meets an NPC, say they like, oh, we're in the village, I really need to go talk to the blacksmith. Sure, there's a blacksmith here, that's not a problem. But when we get there, I put it on the players a little bit. I'm like, okay, what is the blacksmith's name? What, is he human? Is she an elven blacksmith from a different, foreign land? I let them fill in the details, because then it makes them feel a little bit more in charge of the world. It makes them feel a little bit more rooted, like they have a little bit more weight, and that they're making a difference in the gaming world as well too. And you get a lot of that in low fantasy gaming. There's so many charts in this book, but not bad charts. There's things, if you've ever played, some of the older editions of games that came out in the 80s and stuff, things like Rune Quest and some of those other games, Middle Earth, MERP, those kind of things. There was tons of charts, and they were very structured part of the game, right? That's something that you had to have all the time. You're flipping back and forth constantly. Now, every time you had a hit, you're rolling on this chart to see what happened. And while that was fun at the time, it made the game very complex. It made the game very sluggish and slow. When I talk about charts in this book, is that there are options for you. If you get into a bind in the middle of a game and you don't have an encounter for the middle of a forest or a swamp, or you're in town and you're looking for a specific whatever, you just flip open this book, you roll some dice, and boom, you have some ideas. It's sort of an idea builder built right in. They're not meant to be a major part of the game. Like, they're not meant to be an essential part of the game as it is. But things there to help you along, that give you inspiration, to help you sort of create things on the fly. And there's tons of them in there in case you ever get into a bind. Some of the settings that this game inspires me to. So if you don't want to use the Midlands, some of the things that this game sort of draws my attention toward, whenever I'm reading it over, it reminds me of different things. Of course, right out of the gate, the Hyborian Age of Conan the Barbarian, Kull the Conqueror, any of those, Bran Mak Morn, and any of the Robert Howard stuff really reminds me of. These are an age of lots of exploration and treasure and kingdoms to overcome and these, mighty whatever. But it's also a world where magic is very dangerous, and it might be very prevalent in the world. There might be lots of magic, but there's a lot of drawbacks to that because it's sort of magic drawn from these dark demon gods and stuff. So that's one of the worlds that it sort of reminds me of. It also reminds me of Middle Earth, Tolkien's Middle Earth, right? It's sort of lyrical and not always light, but sometimes lighthearted, but sometimes very dark. There's lots of magic, but it's not magic that people can use, right? It's sort of magic that's inborn. It might be created into weapons, or it might just be the earth itself. So magic is sort of an elusive thing that's very, very dangerous, and is not meant to be in the hands of men. So, for instance, the One Ring, right? It's this magical ring, but created in such a way that it's a horrible thing for mortals to have in their possession. So an interesting look at magic in that kind of a setting as well, too. The Black Company novels by Glenn Cook, if you haven't read any of those, these things are amazing. It's a very military fantasy, but very gritty and dark, with magic being sort of utilitarian, right? That it's not super prevalent, it's not super powerful, but you might be able to use it to mend a bone or to, block a gap in a wall kind of thing as an approaching army. So it's not uber powerful, and it's not uber, like a lot of really flashy kind of magic, but there are some there, and it's more used as being sort of a more utilitarian kind of concept. Then there's, Westeros, so the Game of Thrones fame, where you can run more political and intrigue and human monsters as opposed to like dragons and such. That the humanity are the evil ones. They're the dark ones, right? And so lots of games of intrigue and political backstabbing and that kind of stuff you can easily do with low fantasy gaming. So next time, I said this was going to be sort of a mini series. We're already running close to 20 minutes as it is. But next week, I want to do a sort of, I'm going to need your help. Let's put it that way. So between now and next week, when I film the thing, I'm going to give you guys a week. I'm going to put some polls and stuff out there. I want to build a sort of setting together. But I have a framework. I have a structure that I want to do. What I want to do is I want to call it the Siege. It's going to be a mini campaign of about 3 sessions in which you're either playing characters who are on the side of the besieging army, or your characters who are inside the besieged castle and city. But that's the framework. We're going to have a city and a castle besieged, maybe not a city, but like a town. We'll discuss that. Definitely a castle being besieged by an army, and I want to have a mini campaign of how that plays out. And it's the grittiness of this game that will work really, really well for that kind of idea. So that's our setting. Over the week, I'm going to be posting a few things, a few polls and stuff as well too. But if you have ideas that you want to see fit into the game that come from low fantasy gaming or any kind of a part of your imagination, put it in the notes down below. Also, check out the Facebook page. If you haven't checked out the Questwise Facebook page, please go do so, because I post a lot of stuff over there, including all links to the videos I do here. But I hope you've enjoyed this video, part 1 of probably 3. And we're going to do the Siege next week. We're going to talk about this mini campaign setting we're building together. And then the following week will be kind of my wrap-up thoughts on the system as a whole and some other cool things to throw your way. So until next time, I'm Questwise, and I am out.